are honored to partner with the Global Church Network and Dr. James Davis and present to you the church and technology. First off, as we begin to dive into the church and technology, one of the things we must realize is that you were born for such a time as this. You were born for this generation in the age of Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all of this technology. You were born in the age of video, internet, everything that is available. We need to make sure that we utilize all means of communication to get the gospel out. So I'm excited as we begin to share with you today and dive into how to reach people with the power, the church moving forward, reach people evangelistically using the power of technology, the church, also what is available online, these tools. So we want to lean in today on the 5 Ds of digital engagement, how to reach people online, how to grow your ministry, how to grow your church and make an impact online. Now, my name is Clint Rogers. I'm actually the founder of Pro Media Fire. And it's interesting because I began my journey years ago heading out into missions work and evangelism and reaching people for Christ in Africa, Europe, Central, South America. That's where I started. And then my wife and I, long story short, and in the middle of our course, we lost everything. A total nightmare, wiped out financially, worst decision of my life, partnering with a friend in business, wiped out. Came to a place where I had to forgive myself, had to forgive him. And as we came out of that season, and my wife and I coming out stronger, our life 2.0 with my family, as we came out and headed into our next season, we began to share what God did for us in churches. And one of the things we began to see was again and again that the church was struggling with speaking the language of culture. The church was struggling with reaching this generation. And we knew at that time that God was calling us to be digital missionaries to help the church maximize all modern means of communication and reach out and make an impact. And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today, is that less than 1% of churches, even after the pandemic, realized the power of digital, that are truly maximizing and leaning in on how to reach more people and make an impact online and use the power of technology in the day and age that we live in. We truly live in exciting times, and you were born for such a time as this. So we launched out, we started Pro Media Fire. As you can see here now, here's a large group of some of our staff. As now we have grown, we help churches, nonprofits around the world, helping them reach and make an impact. We're their creative and digital team working remotely for them. So this is something we've done for a number of years, and we've just been honored to help churches grow and thrive. And one of the things that we have found out is that there are 5 Ds of digital engagement. There are 5 core areas that you need to realize and understand with reaching people online. As we get into the 5 Ds, the first D is design. Design is so important because if you don't get the design right, then nothing else is going to work. One of the things that I found early on in my missions work is that when I would go into a country and we would speak understanding, you had to be able to speak the language of the culture. You had to bring the gospel in their language and in their culture, bringing the message of Christ. So the job as a missionary, the job in coming and doing evangelism is to come in and bridge that and tell the story of Christ and communicate it in that culture in a way that they can understand, in a way that touches their heart, and they can see, in which the Holy Spirit works, and they can see that revelation of Jesus as the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. So there is this art in coming in and speaking the language of culture. It seems so simple. Let's say that I go over and I'm in Africa and working in Western Africa. I'm in Ivory Coast and I'm out and I go onto the street corner and I am preaching in English. Well, guess what? No one's going to respond unless they speak English. This is the wrong place to be communicating in English. I should be speaking in French. I should be speaking in their native tribal tongue and ministering to them in a language they understand. And this is vital that we understand that this is how it works digitally. This is how it works today, is that design, the first D, is so important Because if you don't get it right, you can never have the conversation. No one will listen to you online. This is one of the first areas that we see that ministries and churches are struggling is in the area of design. And design is fascinating because design does not mean, it depends if you want to and you're like, hey, we want to reach young people, want to reach others on trend. It doesn't mean that you have to be the trendiest and the most cool and the best there. No, that's not necessarily the case. You have to speak the language of those you want to reach. So if you're looking to reach French-speaking individuals, you better be speaking French. It seems simple, right? It's the same thing with design. One of the things that's happened is now with the power of the phone, with the power of technology, the world is flat. When I say flat, I mean that there are the exact same expectations for the small church as there is for the large church. There's the same expectations in the rural community as there is in the urban inner city. Why? Because now social media has made the world flat. We all see the same graphics, we see the same videos, we see all the same media coming at us. So without realizing it, our expectations have increased. And if you're a small church or you're a small ministry, there still is the same, once again, looking at design, there is the same expectations for you to come with a professionalism and to reach out. So what happens is if you don't have the right design, you will never reach the audience you want and you desire to reach. Seems simple, but this is oftentimes what happens. I know that one pastor had come to us and he said, hey, we want to reach, get out here, and they're coming to us early on. Hey, we'd like to have the conversation, being clients. Can you help us reach out? So begin to start talking with them and chatting with them, getting to hear their heart and who they are. And I said, who is you want to reach? Well, we hear this oftentimes. He said, I want to reach young families. And as we get on and begin to look at their website, the design was an old and outdated design. It didn't speak to this generation. It wasn't relevant. It wasn't speaking to them. The messaging and the visuals and the graphics and the design, it did not speak to young families. Well, I happen to know. I've got a 13-year-old, 11-year-old. I got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old now. So here we are. I'm at this place where I've got kids. So I'm looking, I've got certain needs. I have certain expectations. And so I'm coming in and looking for something. Well, he wasn't speaking to those young fans, wasn't speaking to the parents, and the design was not appealing. So if you came to the site, I found myself, wow, I wouldn't give, though these people are wonderful, and I've had this so many times. I'm on talking to the pastors and his team on there. I'm thinking, man, these are amazing people. These are great people. I would love to go check out this church if I was in the area once I talked to them. But when I spoke to them and I communicated with them, I heard their heart. I saw who they were and I said, man, these people are amazing. I want to know them more. And I just said, oh, so awesome. But here's the thing. I didn't get that from the website. I didn't get that from their social media. So I went on, the website was kind of cold, and it didn't have that feel for families and that welcoming feel, and the visual, the graphics, the aesthetics, it was not there. It didn't pull me in. Well, that did an injustice to that church and that ministry, because in the area, when people are searching for a church and you move into the area and you're looking for a church and somewhere that you want to go attend and try out, one of the things here is that it didn't speak to the young families. So we had to change their design and change once again, coming out with a new aesthetic, coming out with a new look, that they were the same people, but they weren't speaking the language of culture online. They were speaking English to French-speaking people. And this happens so many times with churches and they don't even realize it. It's kind of like, take my aunt, for example. I love my aunt. My aunt's amazing. Love my aunt. Much older. She shares something on social media. Well, guess what? I'm going to give her some love. I'm going to like the post. I may even comment on the post, but I wouldn't dare share the post because the post, my friends, others would be like, what in the world is that? What are you doing, Clint? What is that? It wouldn't speak to them. It wouldn't communicate their language. But to me, I love my aunt. I know my aunt, so I'm going to give her love. How many churches and ministries are just like that? They wonder why their social media isn't shared. They wonder why their content doesn't go anywhere. They wonder why their website, why it's not working. What happens is the people at the church love their church. They love the people. They love their family, but they're not going to share it. They're not going to get it out there. Why? Because it doesn't speak the language of culture. It's not something that is relevant, speaking that language of culture, getting out. Now, here's the thing that's so fascinating about this. The key about design and all of this, bringing your aesthetics, is number one, this first place is speaking the language culture who you want to reach. So if you tell me that you want to reach, the elderly and 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds, and you say, hey, this is our core audience. We're over 65. This is our ministry, who we want to reach. Well, you need to understand that your design, your messaging, all of it needs to come out in a certain way for them. Now, it can be on trend and professional and look great, and it doesn't have to be young and trendy. It's just professional, crisp, going to speak to them and come out and speak their language. Same thing, if you tell me you want to reach young people, we're going to come with a different style and a different design to catch them. One of the powerful things is that they have found that when people come on your website, they make a decision in seconds. In seconds, we make a decision on a brand, whether we like it, whether we're going to get a try, and it's just like that. And you have literally 7 seconds. That's it total, if people even stay around that long. There's something called the bounce rate, where we've all done it. We see something on Google, we're like, I think I want to go there. We click on it, we show up there, it's a bounce. In a moment, you see something visually and you're like, nope, that's not it. Boom, gone. Great example is a young couple. As I was asking them and they were going into a new area, I always like to ask people when they're moving, what is their digital experiences? How do things work? And this was a young couple that I was speaking with where he had left college. He's now a software engineer going into another community. He was at a smaller church, him and his wife, very involved. She's on the praise and worship team. They're givers, highly involved, and they're looking where we planted in this new city. Any church would love to have these highly engaged believers come and join their church. So what was your experience? How did you find a church? And so Jesse tells me, well, this is what we did. I began to start looking online. It all starts right here. I began to start looking online, searching for churches, and I would drop on the church, and he says, I would see some of them. And I said, yeah, so how was it? He said, I'd see some of them, but then I just couldn't get past the design. I couldn't get past the design. And I even told myself, we came from a small church. I know these are good people, wonderful people, and I tried to give them a shot, but I couldn't get past the digital presence. He couldn't get past the design of the website. He couldn't get past the way they were messaging it online. And so therefore, they jumped off those sites. And I said, well, what churches did you give a try? He said, I gave the ones that their design was more relevant and they were speaking to me. And he said, those are the churches we tried. And they ended up going to a fairly larger church, though they ultimately wanted a smaller church. Now they found small groups there, everything else, but he said they actually wanted a small church. But they weren't speaking the language of culture. They weren't drawing in. Here are these young millennials, a young couple coming in, and they want to get highly involved. And we're not speaking their language. See, here's the key. It all starts online. It all starts with your design. If you don't get the design right, then everything else we talk about doesn't matter. I often find where clients will come to us and they'll say, we want to spend money on digital marketing and digital evangelism, and we want to go big. And they come in and they have a budget. They're ready to spend. But we look at the church, we look at the design, we look at the ministry, and the first thing we see is the design's not right. Your website's not correct. You're not speaking to who you want to reach, and it would be a waste of money. We can't take your money. It would not be right to spend all this money because the advertisers don't care. Facebook doesn't care. YouTube doesn't care. Once again, none of the they don't mind. All the platforms will take your money, even if your strategy is wrong. And that's where a lot of ministries have failed. They do the boosted posts. They do stuff out there. They failed, and they're like, oh, it doesn't work. And they've lost money because these things just don't work. And they've missed the fact that you could spend that money and we couldn't do it. In our integrity, we're like, we can't do that for you, because the first thing you need to do is you need to fix your design. And that even starts with your brand. And was, once again, coming out, sometimes you need to rebrand. You may need a new name. You need a new logo coming out and rebranding to reach the next generation, and make those shifts and changes. But it's about speaking the language of culture. So we have to be willing. I know that oftentimes I'll come to clients and I'll say they're so caught up in, it's a legacy church and a legacy ministry, and they're so caught up in that design and all of these aesthetics and what they have. And I'll ask them the question, are you willing to go with a design, with a style that you don't personally like? This is normally older leaders or older leader that's involved. Are you willing to go with a style that you don't like to reach who you want to reach, the next generation who you're telling me you want to reach? It's a hard question. That's where we have to stop and ask ourselves, am I, as we get older, willing to go with a style that's not my personal style to reach the next generation, to speak the language of culture to the next generation? Most all those leaders will come back and say, yes, I am. I don't want what I personally love. I want what's speaking the language of culture. I want what's going to bring the next generation to Christ, because I'm not caught up in those aesthetics. I'm not caught up in that. I'll let that go to reach more people for Christ. If we need a new logo, if we need a new design and website, we need that new messaging, because we're not going to compromise the gospel and the message of Christ. But I want to make sure that I'm speaking the language of culture and reaching the maximum amount of people in my city, in my nation, and in the world, and that we fulfill the ultimate call. So you have to answer that question for you today as you're listening. Are you willing to go with an aesthetic? Are you willing to go with a design that is not your personal taste, but is going to reach those that you are called to reach, that's going to impact those that you're called to impact? That's the question you must answer. Make sure you get your design right. Good design matters. It matters in every area of life. It matters in finding a church. And so the church that is speaking the language of culture is the one that's going to have the opportunity to share the message of Christ. The ministry who's speaking the language of culture is the one that's going to have the opportunity to share the gospel. We make these decisions constantly. When I walk into a store, I'll see one design over another. Here's one instance right here where I was walking a store, choosing a creamer. And I'm looking at different creamers, and the aesthetics of this creamer caught me. And I had never tasted that creamer, never had it before. But I saw the aesthetics, it was so beautiful. And I'm looking at it, I said, man, I'm gonna buy this and try this. And I'd never tasted it before. Guess what? I picked that one out of all the creamers on the shelf, and it was because of the taste that I bought it again. Keep that in mind. It says 7 out of 10 consumers say that your brand, your design, your messaging, all of that packaging matters. So it's the church and ministry who has the design right. Now, I only came back to that product. You got one shot because I tasted it and it was good. But the ministry that comes with the design, the messaging that's able to start the conversation is the one now. They're going to come and taste. They're going to come and see. Is this a church we want to go to? Is this where we want to be? Is this a ministry I want to listen to? Because you're speaking their language. That is the ministry who will have the conversation to impact this generation. Good design matters. Your design matters. This is the first place. If you're not reaching people online, if you're not making an impact online, you first need to start with your design. You also need to design with a destination in mind. Where are you taking people? Oftentimes we find this where we'll see this again and again, where churches and organizations will come to us and their design will be in a place where they don't know what the intent is, what the destination is. This is why we'll begin to talk about digital pathways. Who are you designing for? Where are you taking them? What is your strategy and your specific strategy in reaching more people for Christ? Where do I want to take them? Because when you design to start conversations and you design to take them somewhere, that's where you're going to make a huge impact for the gospel. So this brings us into our next D of the 5 Ds of digital engagement. The next D is in the area of discussion. The next area is the 5th D is in the area of discussion. So we see here as we get in discussion, we want to design with the intent to bring people into a discussion where they're starting a conversation and we are pulling them into the conversation. These conversations online, maximizing their impact. The key is when you design with a destination in mind, your media is to start conversations. A great example here is Valley Church. I know Pastor Peter, they'd come to us and we were honored to help them come in with their media and their design, get all of this right, to design with the destination in mind. Starting the discussion, starting pulling in people into the church to give them a try, to see, to listen, to hear what they have to say, to start discussion. We're honored to help Valley Church go from 600 to 1,200. And it was exciting to watch the growth. And I asked Pastor Peter, are you okay with us sharing this? Can we share this with others and get this out there? And he says, yes. He says, your team was a huge part, because of course they were doing the work in the trenches of preaching the sermons, reaching people. But he says, without the media, we couldn't have done it, because you brought the people in. You helped us grow. You helped us speak the language of culture. And it's powerful when we get the systems working to design with a destination in mind. Design with where are we taking the people? They were looking for physical growth in their campuses. They were looking to grow and further their growth. In the same way, we need to design with the destination in mind. And before we get into go further, jump into our second D, let me first give you the action steps for the area of design. Number one, get specific. You need to get specific with your design. Who that destination, where are you designing? You're designing to get into discussion. You're designing as we get into that next D. The action step number one is get specific. Who specifically are you reaching? Who specifically are you looking to impact? And the next is evaluate your brand. Are you speaking to the people that you want to reach? Are you speaking to them? Evaluate your brand. Take a look. Is your brand speaking to those individuals? And the third is change your design. Make the changes to reach those people. Make the changes to impact those people. Design with the people you want to reach in mind. That means go out. Look at, if you want to reach young people, you need to look at even secular. What are the styles? What are the designs? What are reaching these young people? And you need to come in the language of the culture to start a conversation, to be able to bring them into the conversation and share Christ with them. Make sure you're speaking the language of culture. Now, with the 5 Ds of digital engagement, we're designing all of this, getting specific to bring them into the second D, which is discussion. So we design with a destination in mind. We're bringing them in to start a conversation. Now, this is Pastor Tim. Pastor Tim came to us and he had actually come to a place where they were struggling, closing down a church, struggling speaking the language of culture. And he came and he said, Clint, I want your help. Will you help us reach this generation? We want to start a new church, a new work. So we came to this place where we were honored to help them start this new work. And it was powerful because when we had launched and got in, we did this all digitally. Went out and specifically on YouTube and on Facebook and on Instagram and pulled out and started a conversation. We designed with the destination in mind. We want to reach the younger generation, and we pulled in all their initial team. Their launch team came from online. And then we took that initial launch team and we went out. And then we took them and we said, we're going to do our launch. And we did all of our launch, huge pushing out, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. And we started conversations. We started asking questions that this generation is asking and said, you know, pulled them into the conversation online to the point where the disenfranchised with church, the prodigals, those that were searching, all wanted to come out and they wanted to be there for launch. And on launch day, the place was packed. Man, the main sanctuary was packed. They had over 400 people. The 2 overflow rooms were packed. And here we are, we saw the parking lot, they turned people away. Didn't have enough room, and all of it was done with digital evangelism, digital outreach, bringing people into the conversation and pulling them in with a destination in mind. Now, we've got 3 action steps to start these discussions in this area of discussion as we're designing with the destination in mind. And that destination is to start conversations online. And if you want to bring them into digital pathways online, to bring them in online. If you want to bring them in physically into physical services, into physical campuses, well, then we're going to design with that destination in mind. But you first want to start a discussion with people. Number one, evaluate your content. Evaluate your content. Is your content the kind of content that makes you want to lean in? You know that kind of content. You know the kind of content where you have specifically where I'm sitting and looking on Facebook, Instagram. I don't normally make a comment, but I see this and I'm like, yes, I've got to make a comment. I've got to say something here. And you jump, and that's the kind of stuff that pulls you in. It makes you want to be a part of the discussion, makes you want to say something. We want people to like and engage and drop a comment and be involved and say something. But you have to have content that's engaging. It has to be engaging content. One of the things that we find that's so powerful is the power of storytelling, the power of leaning in on who God's created you to be. Oftentimes we see ministers, we see others, they're trying to be something else. They're trying to be like the big church. They're trying to be like the big ministry. Instead of just being yourself, who are you? What is your story? Who resonates with you? There's only one you. And when you lean in with your content online and you be who God's called you to be, and you lean in on that, it calls out those people you're called to reach. They're listening and they're like, you're speaking to me. You call them out. The best thing you can do is lean in on your story, lean in on the messages, what God's putting into your heart, and be you. The more you be you and lean in on who you're called to reach, the more your ministry will grow. Stop trying to be everyone and like everyone. Stop trying to do it like so-and-so or so-and-so. Do it like God's called you to do it online. The more transparent you are, the more real you are, the more you, just be you online, the more you're going to grow. It's powerful. We've seen it again and again. It's absolutely powerful. Be who God's called you to be. Evaluate your content. Now, let's look here next is create engaging content. So when you create your content, look and ask yourself, is this content engaging? Would I want to say something? Would I want to do something? Would I want more? Would this make me stop? Would this make me lean in? If it's going to make you lean in, if it's going to make others lean in, it's good engaging content. It's going to make people want to say something, make people want to do something. It's going to stop the scroll. Remember, you have seconds online to catch people. You want your content to be engaging. You want them to pull you in, to pull them into the conversation. And number 3, have two-way conversations. Make sure yourself and your team, when people are commenting and they're responding to you online, and now they are into a discussion, make sure you respond back. You better have a team that when they reply, they drop something right here in the comments. Boom, you guys are dropping back, man. You're giving them a heart. You're giving them some love. You're responding. You're answering their questions. You're there. You're engaging them. The more you do that, the more you show you care. The more you start conversations. That's on the journey of bringing people to Christ, of making an impact online. The 5 Ds of digital engagement. Make sure that it's two-way conversations. And the next D, as we get into our 5 Ds of digital engagement and go further, I want you to know that the first 2 are really the shallow depths of the 5 Ds of digital engagement. This is just the shallow depths here. Is that most ministries, most churches, they are interested in the likes and in the comments, and this is all they're focused on right here. Hey, are we getting enough likes, comments, people are? And what they miss is now is where we go deep. Now is where we take them further. This is where really the growth begins to happen. You're just heading down the right road. If you got your design right and you're starting conversation, you are designing and reaching people, and your content is engaging and pulling them into conversation. Now here, the next is where it really is powerful, and you've got to go deeper. It's design, discussion, and number 3, it's discovery. Discovery, digital pathways. Discovery is where the magic happens. Discovery is where growth begins. Discovery, the key to discovery, is having binge-worthy content. Binge-worthy content. A great example is, you've been there probably, where I'm sitting there with my wife and we start watching something on Netflix. We're watching on Netflix and we watch the first show. And then we're watching the second show. And then we're watching the third. Next thing you know, it's 1 a.m. and I'm like, babe, we've got to go to sleep. We are just up. It is way too late. We should not be up here doing this and we realize that we are binging and it's time to go to bed. It's binge content. We want more. We want more. And that's the key to growing online. It happened to be years ago where Transformation Church Pastor Michael Todd, he actually had where, he joked about it, where just himself and his family and a few people watching, 25 views on YouTube, and he's preaching his heart out. He's going all out to his congregation. And a girl runs into his content online and she shares it on Twitter and this goes viral. Next thing you know, out of nowhere, people are consuming and binging his content on YouTube. And suddenly he's just beginning, all of a sudden, all of these people are listening and looking. It's the power of discovery. He had a library of discovery content, of binge-worthy content that was available online. So as these people were looking for more, and they wanted more, there was somewhere for them to go. This is the key here, is discovery. The power of discovery, it works. That's why YouTube works. You get on, you're searching for something, you find a channel you've never seen before, and you watch one video, another video, another video, another video. Why? The power of discovery. You want to discover more. You want to know more. And so here it's so powerful. As we get into the power of discovery, always think of digital next steps. What is your digital next step? A lot of churches and ministries have, physical next steps. If you attend a service, if you come into a service, they're like, hey, your next step is this. You can do this. Your next steps, hey, go back to the table back here, our next step, or you can jump into our next step class. And oftentimes there's a class for next steps. There's something that you can do and be a part of. We also need to have digital next steps. What are your digital next steps? Number one, let's look at our action steps for the area of discovery. Evaluate the response of your content. When someone finishes your content, what does it make them want to do? What is the call to action? What is the response? Does it make me want to go further? Does it make me want more? When I'm watching the sermon series, do I want more of that sermon series? Do I want to know more? Do I want to watch the next one? Do I want to jump on another episode? See, to them, it's an episode, but you, it's the next message. What's the digital next steps? Really, truly evaluate your content. And are you making people hungry for more? Answering their questions, making them want to dive in deeper. Number two, if you're small and you're a smaller organization, a smaller ministry, a smaller nonprofit, prepare for binge watching. Create binge-worthy content. You need to pour your heart out, man. Pray, seek God, create content that is engaging, that people will want more of. Create that content and build up your library. Build up your library. If it's just your friends and a few people watching that on YouTube, be faithful. What did Jesus say? He that's faithful of little will be ruler over much. So just give faithfulness. Just, man, pour your heart out. If it's 10 people, like it's 10,000. And pour your heart out in that and just release that online. Set that library out. Set that content out of that binge-worthy content. And that will prepare you. Number three, create digital next steps. Make sure you have discovery pathways. You pour your heart out into your content, and then make digital next steps where you can pull people into series and more content, pull them in and grab their email address and begin to communicate with them and begin to pull them in. And now the key is, as you have these digital next steps, the key is where we go from design to, once again, discussion to now discovery. They're wanting more. And what happens in the discovery process, you need to have a CTA. You need to have a digital next steps for those that want to go deep. Those that want to go into, we have the next step of the 5 Ds of digital engagement. Number 4 is discipleship. Discipleship is where we're going to pull them in and go deeper. This is for those that want to go deeper with you, deeper with Christ in the organization. We want to disciple them. You can do this online. You can do this physically. This is simple gospel. We want to bring them to Christ, and now we want to disciple them. We want to disciple them, and we want to train them. The powerful thing about discipleship as we look at it is we want to disciple them and look at here, how do we do it? The key to discipleship is doing life together. Jesus has 12 men that he brings in, he's disciples, and that he pours in, and he does life with them. Day in, day out, doing life with them. This is the power of discipleship. You can do it online in small groups. You can do it physically. We all want community. We're born for community. We desire community. We long for community. We want to do life with people. The key to this level of digital engagement, if you're building an online ministry, is you need to make sure that you are building a community where they can engage, where they can speak to one another, they can pray with one another, where there's small groups, where there's accountability, where people are getting to know each other. You'd be surprised what you can do. Some people think we run a remote company and we've got, a team here in Oklahoma, but we also have a team around the world, around the US. And we get on remotely and it's like we know each other. Some of us have never sat down in person physically. Some of us have. And it's like we know each other because we're on constantly talking by video and by Zoom and chatting and spending time with one another. And by doing it, even online, there's a community and relationship. And I've even had some of those that for quite some time, man, here we are, we're communicating digitally and then we meet for the first time. And it's like, and it's like you know the person. You're like, hey, man, you're just right there. You know them. You know their heart. You know who they are. So the key is build community. Make sure that you build community online and also locally and physically. Have digital pathways to walk them through. And remember, discipleship happens in community. So let's look at some action steps in the area of discipleship. And as we get in the area of discipleship and our action steps for discipleship, number one is build relationships. Build relationships. Build them online, build them physically. Make sure that you focus on relationship building in your discipleship, doing life together. Number two, create small groups. Create small groups that, once again, you come in these small groups that you're doing life together in a small group. And I have seen this myself in doing small groups with my wife and I, with other families, young couples, others, and then I've done them with men, small groups. And I found that the key to small groups and doing life with people is, open up, train your leaders to be transparent. Also find with men when I first start the small groups, whether it's online or whether it's, you're there, you're in person. Is when we first started, it was like, kind of cold, the men, everybody's pulled back. And I'll just open up, get transparent about my life, man, my mistakes, the grace of God, man, the goodness where he's taking me through. You share all that. And then it's like, whoo, all of a sudden the heart's open. And it's like now the first man starts talking and then the next guy. And then all of a sudden we're putting our stuff out there. We're allowing God to work. We're praying through challenges. We're growing together. We're reading the word. Man, we're going at it. And it's like growth starts to come. We really start to grow spiritually. That's discipleship. Spiritual discipleship. Create small groups. And number three, train through community. Train through community. Remember, technology is going to bring you speed, but your community is going to bring you growth. Technology is going to bring you speed. So you want to utilize technology. You want to utilize digital. You want to do all that. Man, that's going to bring you speed, but it's true community that's going to bring you the growth and the impact pouring into the lives of people. It's, man, you see it. And also this discipleship prepares for the last D of our 5 Ds of digital engagement. And so the last D, to review once again, we start with design in our 5 Ds of digital engagement. Then we move into discussion. Then we move into discovery. Then we move into discipleship. And our 5th D of digital engagement is deployment. We then move into deployment. Now, this is simple gospel, right? Bringing people to Christ, discipling them, and then sending them out to go reach people for Christ. And with deployment, this is what we're looking for. Build a digital team. If you're looking for utilizing technology, even physically, you need to build a digital team where you are reaching people online. People are engaging and talking in the comments and getting back, and people are in these groups and leading and reaching people online. Build a digital team and deploy your digital team. Train them, send them out, allow them, get them in the place where they'll share content, they'll make an impact, they'll get out there speaking and reaching and engaging people online, doing digital evangelism. So deployment, let's deploy people. So let's talk about some action steps in the area of deployment. Number one, build a digital team. Build that digital team. Number two, deploy them online. Build them, train them, and deploy them to go out and be the light. This is the key that we need to realize, is that some people want to pull away from social media. They want to pull away from different areas, in our culture. But Jesus said, you are the light of the world. Do we hide that light under a basket? Do we hide that light? No, we go out and we shine. Jesus was out there where the people were at. And he did not sin. And he was right there with sinners and they gave him a hard time. What are you doing hanging out with these people? What are you doing with them? We need to be out there, man, in the square. Back in the day, it was in the town squares that they're coming together. It's where the people are at. Jesus was down there with the people at. The disciples going into it. The Apostle Paul's going into it. He's getting stoned. He's getting taken out, man, just kicked out of the city. We need to be in these places. We need to be reaching people. We need to be making an impact until we're kicked out. Until, if you're stoned today, we don't get stoned physically. We get stoned with words online. We get stoned online. You know what? We need to be the light. We need to be out there on these platforms. Our church, our ministry, we don't need to pull away from any of these platforms. We need to be a light. We need to be the hope. We need to be spreading Jesus Christ and the message of his love and his goodness and his grace and his faithfulness. We need to be that light and share the gospel, the good news. So we need to deploy our team online. We need to let them be the light out there in the world. Number 3, start conversations. Get out there and start the discussion, start the conversations, and bring people to the Lord. So our 5 Ds in review of our 5 Ds of digital engagement today. Number 1, design. Number 2, discussion. Number 3, discovery. Number 4, discipleship. And lastly, deployment. These are the 5 Ds of digital engagement, how you can grow your ministry and utilize the church and technology, utilizing technology online. Get your design right. Design with the people that you want to reach in mind. Make sure your design is on point. Then move into discussions. Start discussions online. Then bring them into a discovery process. Those that want to learn more, they want to know more. Then bring them to Christ. And number 4, disciple them. Train them through community. And number 5, deploy them and get them strong and send them out to be a light in the world. These are our 5 Ds of digital engagement. Remember to design with the destination in mind. Design to bring people down through this process that you can bring them to Christ. Now today, this was our 5 Ds of digital engagement. We're going to go into our digital playbook. This is something that we will continually update. Keep in mind that our playbook it is fresh for this year. It will be fresh for a number of years. When we see that it is relevant to update the content, we will update that content. As we move into our next section, know that this digital content is ideal for right now helping you and your church go to the next level.